Tell me one thing you've learned being CEO.
I mean, there's a lot actually. It's the worst and best job I've ever had. The stuff I've learned that has completely changed my mentality. I began a lot of this with the belief that you didn't need one, which is weird because I am one. And it's not so much saying that no one needed to be in charge, but the best projects I've worked on over the years have always been better when collaboratively treated. What I didn't understand is that in all of those projects, the actual people in charge weren't actually part of them. So you weren't collaborating with leadership, you're collaborating with everyone else on your team. And so when I first stepped into this role, I was big on collaboration, making sure everyone knew I was treating them valuably and all of that. I think over time, I've very much learned that that's actually the opposite of how it works, because the odd power dynamic a CEO has, as the person who basically is telling you what to do, in charge, the end all be all, I am the dictator of the company, that requests don't work as requests, collaboration doesn't work as collaboration. And conversely, a CEO ultimately becomes weak if he allows that to take sort of the run of things. If you move yourself in a position where you're, taking requests from everyone and being soft, you're not able to move quickly enough. And I'm a big fan of moving quickly, to say the least. So I think that's been the hardest thing as we've gone, is to realize there's a need for people to be in charge, for people to have the buck stop here, to be the guy or the people, or even have that hierarchy in place. It feels anathema to sort of my inner sort of everything, really. With that, I think comes the other half of that, which is that as the person who's got to make hard decisions, your job is, as we all know, your job is to keep the project going. Your job is to keep the company going. That is it. You keep going, you keep growing, you keep moving, you get the thing done. And there's only one person whose job that is. And it's a lot more weight, I think, than I thought. I've led a lot of projects in my time. Being CEO, having it literally end with you and being the person who, at the end of the day, you have to fall asleep and be able to sleep, which it gets more difficult for sure in different times. But you are the one who has to be able to sleep knowing that everything's going to work out and you're going to keep things moving. You are the one. That's it. There's no one else. You don't get to lay on anyone else. And I think that, well, I knew it before getting into it. There's a difference between knowing and experiencing, and knowing the realities of what that means. I think it's been a lot. It's been good, but it's been a lot.
What's another really important thing you've learned being CEO of C9?
The second sort of part of being a CEO that I think has been more enlightening and also more difficult, I think that's the double-edged sword of being in charge, has been that you have to have a very cold and calculated and cynical view of the company while maintaining a warm and fuzzy view of the company. And these things can't coexist. You can't have them mingle. The moment you have them mingle, and you have to see all your employees and talk to them as if they're people, because they're people. Like, they are humans, and they have strains and stresses and problems and needs and desires and passions and wants and thoughts and everything. You have to treat them like that, and you have to be that way. So on the one hand, you have to keep that sacrosanct. On the other hand, they are a number on a balance sheet. It sounds cold. It is cold. So everyone has to exist sort of like Schrodinger's cat, both, cold and warm at the same time. And you can't let them mingle. The moment you mingle is the moment when that balance sheet no longer matters as much as the passions, which can be good. Not in super my experience. I think you need to be able to have that separation of sort of the church and state of things, that here are the passions, here's what people care about, but here's also the realities at the end of the day. The dividing line there, they don't get to set. The dividing line there, people underneath you don't get to choose. They can't. They don't understand where their dividing line is, because they aren't the person who, again, like the first, at the end of the day, it's on you. And so where do you draw that line? Where is a person the moment on the sheet? Where is it what they're doing in the real world? If you lose the person, you become too cynical. If you lose the cynical, you become too warm. And that back and forth is far more difficult than I expected it to be. I tend to be a more warm, goofy fucking person, heart on my sleeve type. And I don't think I'm going to be able to change that. But I think the big lessons over the last 2 years we've had is that how I need to maintain that, how I need to keep things cold enough but warm enough. Because ultimately, when you're in charge and the buck stops with you, that's the thing that matters. Yeah, and it's been a long road to get to that place, to sort of learn that. Because everyone I have working for me, I actually like, which is its own troubling thing. When you actually like everyone you work with and you know all their troubles, it's much more difficult to see them as that number, or to think about it as profit loss, or to think about it as where's my cost structure. But you don't have a choice. You're in charge.
What's the third biggest lesson being CEO has taught you?
The third, probably the biggest lesson that comes from not really the day-to-day life of a CEO, but more like your job as a thing is very much more akin to sort of playing towards the Elon Musk of things. I'm not a big fan of the guy, but really his whole thing about driving hype and value for his company is the first role of a CEO. You exist to do that. You exist to drive that. You aren't the developer. You don't get that creativity. You don't get those outlets. And so when you start playing that role and you start doing the thing to make your company successful, finding those outlets becomes incredibly important. Not just professional life, but also personal life. It's very easy, when you get into your 100th week in a row, basically pulling 80 hours to 100 hours, it gets tiring. And you will find yourself doing more of the same unless you actually step back and realize what's best for the company is for you to stay sane. So you can maintain that division, so you can stay in a healthy place as a CEO, so you can be able to know what needs to be done and how you need to be done. So you can be a person everyone can come talk to, and everyone can say, here are my challenges, here's my rushes, here's my stresses, and you can find ways to alleviate that. If you're not able to do all of those things, you're a failure as a CEO, which means you have to take care of yourself in the same way that a body needs to be taken care of so it doesn't, have a heart attack, or so you can run when you need to run. Like, you have to do the same thing. So finding those external things you can do, those moments of breaks that allow your brain to, disengage but re-engage and keep moving. This has been, I think, best exemplified for me, and everyone's going to have their own. But I've got my kids, and it's a really great time for both of them because, as Violet's getting to closer to a year and a half, and she just passes that, and Dexter's almost 6, it's this really fun time to sit back, engage with them, and allow the sort of fun of things to allow my fuel to be refilled. It's probably the best way to put it. And the kids have been great for that. It's a huge bonus. Early on, I didn't spend as much time as I could have because I needed to get shit done, things getting moving. As I've added team members, as I've had people who've been able to take on those tasks, and I've been able to delegate more and more, I've realized I can't burn 100 hours a week. It has to be high impact, powerful steps, because I'm not doing the day-to-day. Someone else is doing that. Talented, amazing people are doing that, but I'm not. I need to be hitting hard, and for that, I need to re-energize myself. It's a lot more difficult than you think.